conversation starts with an idea. Then comes the work, the process, the commitment to keep going. This is Creators at Work. Conversations with people who make things, share ideas, and build through creativity.
Welcome to Creators at Work with your host, Dunn. Today's guest is Maxwell Ivey, known around the world as the blind blogger. After teaching himself HTML just to get online, Maxwell became a leading voice in accessibility, helping businesses and creators build more inclusive digital spaces. An author, speaker, podcast host, and advisory board member for PodMatch, he's turned vision loss into a platform for impact, proving that determination and self-leadership can overcome any obstacle. Get ready for an inspiring conversation with a true trailblazer.
Hey, how's it going, Max?
I have to give you props for your intro, and I want to know if you will sell it to me because I need something like that on my website.
Oh, I can give it to you. Yeah, absolutely.
As you know, one of the things I really believe in is showing my appreciation whenever somebody does something really good, because most people don't do it. And I feel like, I got to at least do my part to encourage others, especially with as many people have encouraged me over the years. And you it was an incredibly succinct, powerful presentation about who Max is, and wow.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Absolutely. And yeah, I can definitely get you a copy of that. That's not a big deal at all. Cool. Hey, I want to dive in because one of the topics that I really want to talk, and this show is for people that are wanting to get into podcasting. They want to write a book. They want to, build websites, whatever they want to do. Right. But right. At the end of the day, there's some things that we need to think about prior to that. And one of those, in today's topics, I would like to discuss a little bit about accessibility. What is the biggest thing that some of these younger people forget about when it comes to thinking about accessibility?
Right. Well, I don't know that they forget about it. I think in most cases they don't know about it to start with. And there are just so many potential benefits of accessibility. And, you mentioned podcasting, for example. While a lot of us record in video and export audio to our podcast hosting platforms, 60-70% of the podcast audience is still listening as opposed to watching. So yeah. As I like to say, most of your audience is blind, so let's stop treating them as if they can see. And my point there is we need to do whatever we can to bring the audience in and make the show more immersive. And that includes things that most people are familiar with, like transcripts and closed captions, as well as things that most people are not familiar with, which is audio descriptions. And an audio description is basically whenever something happens that is compelling, or possibly at the beginning or the end of your show, you may describe yourself, your background, your recording space if it's on television. Pets are really good. Don't ever throw away cute points. If your dog or cat wants to photobomb your podcast, that's cool. Be sure and describe them and how cute they is. So doing things to bring people into the visual side of it, even though they're listening. And so audio descriptions is a good thing. And then making sure your podcast player is accessible and that the platform you use for delivering it, such as your website, your blog, your social media page, is accessible and navigable, because it doesn't matter how accessible or inclusive your podcast is if the buttons that start the player aren't coded for keyboard navigation, and people with disabilities, depending on adaptive technology, can't press play.
Yeah. And you are 100% correct. Yeah. That's the reason why Apple is still the leading podcast platform out there. And there's no videos with Apple. So the majority of the audience is blind when it comes to, because all we do is listen, and it makes sense because that's where storytelling comes in, is when you can explain the seeing, the senses, the seat, the desk, all these things, and put the person in that seat. That is what becomes powerful.
Right. And I appreciate you pointing out that, Apple is still the leader, and, it's all audio. But, I do have a bone to pick with Apple, because unless something's changed this week, none of the images that show up for people's podcasts on Apple have alternative text. There's nothing built into their system for you to add it. And since there's nothing built in for you to add it, it doesn't show up. And as far as I know of, none of the hosting platforms even have a place for you to enter that information when you set up your account, even though that really wouldn't. And of course, I got to kind of give the podcast hosting people a little bit of a pass there, because the distribution channels like Apple and Spotify, they're only going to include what makes it into the RSS feed. So until Apple, Spotify, Amazon, etc., start putting it into the RSS feed, where the alt text will be presented alongside the image, then I can give the hosting companies a little bit of a pass. However, the hosting companies, they could be helping us by advocating to Apple and Spotify, etc., to fix this one glaring accessibility issue.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's, since we last talked on my other podcast, I have been working on doing things and rewording how I'm doing it, using the transcripts in different ways, going back and looking at some of the code, and I have rearranged some of the way the buttons are and so forth, because our conversation gave me a different perspective on how I was looking at a website as a builder. What is it, changing the focus onto websites? What are some of the big low-hanging fruit that people can do when they're coding their sites?
Right. And of course, nowadays, so few people are actually coding. We've got AI and no code options. We have content management systems like WordPress and website building options like those within Wix or GoDaddy, etc. But I think, I told you before we started recording, I have been advocating for years now that improving accessibility improves user experience. But I've also come to understand that improving user experience improves accessibility. And so some of the low-hanging fruit is not going to be technically accessibility within any of the current regulatory or website guidelines, like the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines or the Department of Justice 504. And so I always say the place really that they should start is when you navigate a website with adaptive technology, it takes you longer to get to everything on the page, to find the things you need to find and move through a website to complete whatever action or transaction it is you came there for. So I would say start by making the most important thing the most important thing. And I understand from my marketing friends that this is something they talk about a lot and get ignored about a lot. If the website is built to sell a service, then finding out about your service and why I should care about getting it from you should be in that top left-hand corner of the website. And so make the most important thing the most important thing. Take a simplistic design to your website. I know that disappoints webmasters, but every time you add something fancy, it's an opportunity to cause an accessibility issue.
Yep.
So keep it simple unless you're sure you can design the fun stuff without breaking accessibility. Some people can do that. Take a minimalist approach to designing your website. Ask yourself on every page, does this have to be on this page? Can this be on another page? Does this even have to be on my website? And of course, that also applies not just to pages, but to images, to videos, to links, to text. really go through and ask yourself, can I make my point? Can I persuade them to buy without needing this additional stuff? And then the first really important technical part of accessibility is build for keyboard navigation first, because people using adaptive technology like screen readers, screen magnifiers, mechanical switch devices, we don't have access to a mouse. So, and I think that right there might be the number one thing I talk about the most as far as something nobody seems to know.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. And it makes you even think even more about, if your site is chaotic,
Yes.
trying to tab through something that's got, headings, subheadings, another subheading, bodies, and stuff just doesn't make sense. I would get frustrated. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and the sad thing is headings can, and even subheadings can be your friend. I mean, they can allow a disabled person to navigate large chunks of information on your website in very short amount of time, if the heading structure is consistent, if it's simple, and if the headings actually describe what it is I'm going to find if I stop at that heading and explore further within that heading. I can't tell you how many times I advance to a heading and I think, okay, this is what I want. And then I go below that heading and I'm like, this is not what they said I was going to find here. So, consistency, a good heading structure, making sure everything is clearly labeled as to what it's going to do or where it's going to take me. And not just, one word or a word and a half or 2 words. There is quite often you will really help somebody with a disability if you will add a little extra description in the names you give to pages, links, and other items within each page. So yeah, a minimalist approach and keeping things simple is really good. But if you're going to have a lot of information on the website, you can overcome that by having really well organized, clear headings and making sure that things match up with the advertising.
Yeah. The other part about what we're talking about here, like you said at the beginning, is this is not necessarily just an accessibility feature. It's more of some of the basic build types too. If you take your heading, right, and you ask yourself what it is that the people that are asking, that are searching for this topic, right? Let's say it's a podcast article and I want to talk about this show. Instead of just saying, this episode was about accessibility, you could change it to, have you built your last website with the most accessibility? Try using these features, right? And now you've got a relatable question as a title. You are getting a full description of what this article is going to be about. And it's going to help you with a little bit of your SEO as well. And you accomplished all of this at the same time.
You just said something there that is really a departure from what a lot of experts would say. And I love it because you're absolutely right. Is there's the best practices would still say, keep your title short, and that may be great as far as how many words in a title are indexed, but you're right. A title like what you just suggested would be very helpful not only to the human users, but also to the search engines and to the AI bots to help drive traffic to your podcast episode, but not just drive traffic, drive people that are specifically looking for the answer to the question that you have offered to, and promised to give them. So
yeah,
you just actually you just showed me something there, man. That's a really good idea, but I think you will agree with me. The majority of experts are still saying, keep those titles really short, really punchy.
Yeah. And I don't like doing it. I have tried it. I'll be honest, and it doesn't really change much as far as whether somebody goes or comes. It might make it easier to incorporate that title into your first paragraph, which is something that you would like to do for SEO purposes. But at the end of the day, I've just found that people are using Google and now they're using ChatGPT like it's Google, and they have learned I don't have to put in keywords, accessibility for computers or something like that. I can just ask a human question and Google's going to pull up those responses. And that's one of the reasons why I started doing it, is because that's how somebody's going to search for it.
And, if you think about the way the AI models have been explained to us, that they operate in a conversational model. So to present an episode title the way you are doing it sounds exactly like what they need in order to direct people to the particular podcast episode. So I congratulate you for coming to those conclusions. That had to take some actual effort and thought and time away from doing the next task in your day in order to come to those conclusions. And your audience should definitely thank you for this kind of aha moments that you bring to your work and also to your show.
I appreciate it, Max. Yeah, it is. It's one of those things that I take a metaphor from the military, and in the military they always say, every day you improve your foxhole, and that's what I like to do with my websites and my shows. Is every day I try to find something that I can improve, whether it be small or big, and just make it better.
I used to challenge myself more than I have lately. Here lately, I seem to be working more on trying to find ways to do what I need to be doing with less steps so that I can spend more time having internal conversations or having conversations with experts like yourself. So it's good that you're still challenging yourself to improve things every day. And it's one of the things that makes it really good to have conversations with you, whether they're for your podcast or not. And then the one thing I kind of got off stride there on is we're talking about the websites or your podcast. The fact that improving accessibility will improve the way users enjoy your site who don't have a disability, will improve the way AI and search engines can recognize and drive traffic. These are things that have nothing to do with having a disability, but they're the benefits of making the effort to improve accessibility. And, just a couple others. I recently learned that improving accessibility will lower load times and make it easier for people who are coding their websites to update them in the future, because accessible code is clean code.
Yeah. And that's, I wasn't going to go too deep into it. Like you said, a lot of people don't code anymore, but going back through and getting rid of dead codes or debugs and everything else that you use during the build process is something that will help out tremendously. Better comments, so forth, all those little things. But at the end of the day, accessibility, when you add that to your website, like you just said, you're not doing it necessarily just for disability purposes. The whole purpose is also to drive people to your site, tell about your show, your podcast, your product, whatever. And at the end of the day, all of these things do that.
Right. Let's consider one thing. Let's just look at closed captions. We get new research pretty much every few weeks on how many people who are not hearing impaired or hearing disabled that are benefiting from closed captions on videos on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. Somebody shared a stat with me recently that 85% of Facebook users won't watch a video if it doesn't have closed captions.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And I'm like, that number sounds a little high to me, but it's just a representation that people who can hear are still using the tools built for the deaf and the hearing disabled.
Yeah.
You know,
My wife's one of them. My wife watches movies she always has the closed captions on, and she can hear fine unless I'm talking.
Yeah. I feel like you said that because you're trying to curry favor at your home, but which I can definitely get behind. And you know, I mentioned audio descriptions earlier. I'm starting to find more people who know me who have heard about audio descriptions that are starting to use them because it allows them to watch or enjoy a movie or a TV show without looking directly at the screen. So, you know, they can more easily do other things like focus on the screen of their laptop if they're trying to do some work while they're at home, or prepare a meal, or do dishes, or take care of a pet or family member. And I even have a few friends that are like, you know, Max, there are some shows like, like Severance that you just can't watch without audio descriptions because they tell you stuff that you miss.
Yeah. I didn't think about that either. But again, you are right, because for me, like I have a membership for Kindle Unlimited, but I use speech to text. I don't read very fast, and I can't read very long without getting tired. So I use speech to text to read the books to me, and I love doing it that way. But it allows me to also do other stuff. I can listen to a book while I'm working on a website or something else.
Yeah. And, Alexa, Google Home, Siri, Apple TV, they're all getting better at delivering more and more content to us through our voice. And, you know, that's one of those things, for the longest time, the only speech to text option you had was Dragon, and it wasn't really an accessibility thing because you had to read a script to it for it to understand your voice and be able to be used as a dictation thing. But with Alexa and Google, we can actually tell it to do things, and in some cases, we can get our voice controlled devices to do things on the internet for us much quicker than we can actually using the internet. Such as, if you're an Amazon shopper, using your device to create your shopping list, and then I've never tried it, but I think there's a way you can even have it actually go ahead and place the order for you if you've got your credit card information in there. So,
yep.
I just found out that I listen to a lot of audiobooks from the National Library Services for the Blind through their audio download app. And I just heard recently that they now have come up with an Alexa skill so that I can connect my Bard account to my Alexa account and actually request books through the girl that talks over there in the corner. And that really doesn't affect me much because I'm pretty proficient with my iPhone. Yeah. But for people who are newly dealing with new vision loss, say somebody whose their vision is going because they're aging, and that sort of vision loss will cause a problem for technology use because it can be very hard to get over the learning curve of using a device with a speech synthesizer on it, like I have. So I recently wrote an article for Consumer Reports, and one of the things I talked in there about hacks for people dealing with new vision loss was, using Alexa and pairing it with your Roku, your Sirius XM radio, if you have one of those satellite radio packages, Amazon, these other services, that somebody can just speak the commands to that device and not have to navigate a computer or a phone with technology they're just really starting to use because of recent vision loss.
Yeah. Let's dig into a little bit about some of these bigger companies. We've now touched on the lower hanging fruit and the little stuff. Let's dig into a little bit about what are some of the pushbacks when you've talked to some of these companies out there that, like we talked about Apple previously. What are some of the pushbacks that they're giving you as far as why they don't want to go back in and add more accessibility?
Right. Well, I think there's really like two groups. There's the group that will tell me and others that they've already built in accessibility, or that they have a team doing it. And the more you use their sites, the more you realize that either the team is fictitious or the person running the team has got the wrong goals or something, because there are a lot of huge corporations that have teams in place, or if they don't have the teams, they have the resources, and yet they're not making real strides in improving accessibility. One of my pet peeves as a self-published author is Amazon KDP, which is their self-publishing arm that has never been accessible, is not accessible. And as far as I know, they're making no effort to make it accessible. And I think that's because they don't realize that there are a number of people with vision loss who are authors or aspire to be authors who would love to be able to do everything and publish their own darn books. That's just a guess. But that's like one group. Like I say, the group that either says they're doing it or that they're in the process of doing it, and they're either not doing it or they're doing it badly. And then the second group are the ones who will, point to, is there enough income or enough business or enough interest to make it worth me making this kind of an effort? And especially because they will tell you how traumatic it will be to tear up their website and put it back together in a more accessible format. And for that group, there's really two things. One is most people really don't have a way of knowing if the visitors to their website have a disability or not. I mean, there's no way for your stats tracker to tell you, or for the platform you run your website on to recognize if somebody is using adaptive technology. So there could be thousands of people visiting a website, or in some cases, especially in the B2B space, they may not have any customers with a disability, but their customers may turn over the decision-making process or the information gathering process to somebody in the family or somebody in their social community who has a disability. And so we just never really know what customers may or may not have a disability that are either spending the money or influencing the people who do spend the money. That's a lot of the problem is, they talk about there aren't enough people to make it worth it. There isn't enough money. There isn't enough business. And we've never had a customer, or we will never have a customer that will make us need to be accessible. And, when I hear that, I like to make the argument I was just making on, we don't know who is visiting our sites, but I like to share the example of back when I was a carnival operator and worked games on our family's midway. And my dad would remind me about once every few weeks, he'd go, "Maxie, you got no way of knowing how much money somebody has in their wallet. You got no way of knowing if they actually will want to play your game or not, unless you ask every single person that walks past you." And so to me, back in those days when I'd have to yell at every person that walked in front of me to ask them if they wanted to play my game, it's kind of like building an accessible website. You want to build a site that is appealing to people of all abilities, so that you don't, by your own misunderstanding, leave out, ignore, or frustrate thousands or maybe millions of potential customers. So I would say that's a lot of it when it comes to people. And then I feel like some of this is also on people with disabilities, because we often tell businesses that if they don't do it, that they're horrible human beings or they're poor stewards. And we also will often tell them that they have to do it like tomorrow, and they have to do it the way we tell them to do it. And one of the things that really helps me when I have conversations with business owners is, I was never good at it, but I did have to build my own website for 5 years. It has given me empathy for just how difficult it is to make website accessible, especially when you consider the variety of disabilities, both visible and invisible. When you consider the number of operating systems and platforms, when you consider the number of adaptive technology options among platforms, and then when you consider the users' ability or comfort with their tools, it's a really hard problem. And so I find that one of the best things I can do is let the other person know, look, I understand that this ain't easy, or you don't think it's going to be easy, but we don't have to do this all at once.
Yeah.
We can do it over time. We can identify the worst offenders on your website or app. We can fix those over time. We can develop workarounds so that we can tell people who are using your product or service or who might use it while you're working on accessibility. We can communicate those short-term remediations, and we can continue communicating with potential customers through social media or your email list as you work on this. And, you know, accessibility is, I kind of like to compare it to somebody's physical health and well-being. You know, a good weight loss person will tell you, you never get to a point where you can stop working on your, you never get to a point where you can stop dieting. I hate to say dieting because we've learned that's a bad approach, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With accessibility, you never get to a point where you're done. Yep. And it can be fairly fragile. And which is why I often like to tell people that one of the most important aspects of accessibility is stability, reliability, and dependability. So, yeah, I feel like part of it is their problem that regardless of scale, they feel like there's not a financial benefit to it, or it's going to take a lot of time and effort. But I do feel like we are partly responsible in focusing solely on compliance for so long, for telling people they have to do it immediately, and then telling them they have to do it my way. Because, me and you have had some great conversations because I know accessibility, but I know I don't know websites.
Yeah.
I know you know websites. And from what I see, you're willing to learn about accessibility. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So we come together and I go, well, whenever I navigate a form, I go from left to right and top to bottom using tab and shift tab. And I need this. I need the forms to announce to me where I put the information, and you go, well, Max, I don't have to tell you how to do that, but if that's what you need in the form, we can make the form so that it does that, and that's, I've given talks on communication and collaboration as part of accessibility because none of us knows it all. And if we really want to have a great experience for everybody, the business owner, the development team, the marketing team, the accessible person, the government agency, we have to bring everybody together and give them equal responsibility and equal ability to share their thoughts and experiences so that we bring together the people who know how to code, the people who know how to use adaptive technology, and the people who understand what the marketing and sales vision of a company is. Because as you know, there are ways to build accessible websites that are still fun, engaging, interactive websites that can still promote products and services in pretty much the same way marketing people always want to do it. But only if you come together as a team from the beginning, or you pick a point at some point along the way and you come together as a team and you communicate and collaborate. So I like to say that I can share my experiences, but I'm not going to give somebody a puzzle box with a picture of what accessibility looks like to me and tell them, okay, this is what you have to do. And if you don't do it, I'm going to be mad at you.
Yeah. And I think that's what you brought up is a good point. I know if I was not the builder, but I was the business owner and I was considering how do I do this in a way that it doesn't affect my business, it becomes more accessible, and it's built to the point to where when somebody does find my website and it's accessible, they want to come back and use it again because they had a good experience.
Yes.
For me, that means I would hire somebody like you as an advisor to come in and at least give me a direction to go. Where should I start? How should I break this project up so that it doesn't impact me as well? Is that how you kind of some of your clients that you've talked with in the past? Is that kind of how you work it with them?
Yeah. Yeah. And some of my clients started out as volunteer experiences back before I realized my value as an accessibility expert due to my many years of lived experience. But yeah, it really just starts with, finding out where they're at now and figuring out what's the most important things. What are the things that are going to cause users the most problems? And another thing I really love to do whenever possible is, in the short term, I'll get in trouble if I tell people that they can do this, pretty much all the time. So I try to remember that. But I honestly believe that in the field of accessibility, there is a place for done for you alongside done with you and do it yourself. And obviously the goal is independence and accessibility, so people with adaptive technology don't have to get user help, don't have to get help from the site owner, the customer service team, or from family members, or from apps like Be My Eyes and Aria. I do believe that in the short term, there's definitely a place, and there are some things that are very hard to develop in an accessible format. So I do believe in done for you, done with you, do it yourself.
Yeah.
And as long as you're making progress, sincere progress, in general, you're going to be fine. Now, nobody really knows how the European Accessibility Act is going to be enforced over there, because it's a new law that's fixing to be a year old, and nobody over there really knows how it's going to be actually enforced in practice.
Yeah.
As you know, I tend to avoid talking much about regulations, but the advertising, the headlines say that the EAA is going to be very persuasive. But the thing is, no matter what law we're talking about, whether we're talking about the Americans with Disabilities Act, the EAA, the law they're working on in Australia, most businesses are still going to think to themselves, will they ever catch me? Will they ever punish me? Yeah. And a lot of businesses will probably, if their decision is based strictly on compliance, a lot of businesses will just decide to take their chances. Yeah. Which is why I focus so much on, the positive benefits, the huge size of the market, the money we spend, the voices we have, the fact that we're loyal consumers of products, services, as well as content like podcasts. The fact that we self-advocate because we want to support business owners making the effort. I feel like sincere, consistent effort is always going to be appreciated by people like me, and also by the regulatory agents, whoever those may be in whatever country they may be.
Yeah.
And the one thing that does kind of perplex me in this whole area of accessibility is the number of times I talk to a company and they've hired me, or they're going to hire me, or I'm continuing to work for them, and they show no interest in putting it out into the world that they're working on accessibility. And I'm not sure if that's because they're afraid somebody will try to have a gotcha moment with them, or they're afraid they'll get in trouble because they'll use the wrong words. I don't know why it is, but I know a lot of companies that have done the work in accessibility, even before the attacks on DEI, even before that, a lot of them were just not interested in promoting their efforts in accessibility. And, I still don't understand it. I will say this much. You mentioned in the intro that I'm on the advisory board for PodMatch. And one of the most interesting interviews I have had for my podcast, Accessibility Advantage, so far was Alex Sanfilippo. It was totally eye-opening because he shared with me how many business owners in the SOS arena, in the small and medium-sized business category, that reached out to him directly and said he was stupid for wanting to embrace accessibility, that it was going to kill his business, ruin his bottom line, that it was, and of course I was not aware of this until I interviewed him about it. But I wonder if not not knowing that before my conversation with Alex, I wonder if maybe that is why some people will do accessibility but not talk about it.
That's a good point. And I was just sitting here trying to think, how is it that it would destroy a business, or how would it affect your business? We're talking about something that can be done the way you eat an elephant, just one bite at a time. And
Yeah.
and you can run your websites through a developer platform where it's not live, the world doesn't see it. And if you improve your foxhole a little bit each week, and you fix one thing and add one thing to accessibility, and the next time you run an update, you upload your tested platform that now is working, over a period of time, you're going to be very far along in this process. But most importantly, you'll never be done. So it doesn't make no sense to try to rush out there and say, okay, we're going to only work on accessibility for the next 3 weeks. And whatever we get done, we get done. That doesn't make no sense, because you would never say that about your website. We're only going to promote these products and set up our website like this for 3 weeks,
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of the things that I really love doing is, whenever PodMatch has a new feature, I'm usually the first one to try it out, because they want to know if the new feature is going to be accessible. They also want to make sure the new feature isn't going to harm any of their previously built accessibility. And so, one of my favorite things to do is, hey, PodMatch just added a new feature, and, share that out on my social media networks.
Yeah.
And to me, I see only positives from sharing continued progress in accessibility, whether we're talking about a company starting from zero, or we're talking about a company that has a sincere dedication to it that's going to do it from now on. So I wish I understood why companies didn't want to be more open about their investments in accessibility. To me, the best way to keep the regulators and the lawyers away is to have documentation that you're working on it.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Absolutely.
That's just my opinion. But, as you know, me and you, we sometimes come to conclusions that the rest of the world just doesn't get. So,
yeah.
But yeah, and just to be, totally honest, one of the reasons why I would like to figure out how to encourage more businesses to share their accessibility investments is I'm a content creator, and I would love to have new clients who are not only hiring me to improve accessibility, but are also hiring me to create content for them. That's what because then you keep clients longer, you have to chase leads less often, and you also can really benefit the client and the community through that continued interaction. But so I'm hoping that more people realize that it isn't going to cripple their business if they talk about wanting to embrace accessibility, or if they've already done it. And, I love talking about the benefits of accessibility, especially some of the unexpected ones. I've just finished my second round with Less Annoying CRM, which is in my opinion, it's a very accessible CRM platform. And they were doing accessibility long before they met me. But the thing about it is I've been with them twice now, last year and this year, and both times they did a blog post about about redoubling their efforts. But the thing is, I had the COO on my podcast a couple of years ago, and he told me something interesting. He said, Max, we're actually able to compete with larger companies for talent, because a lot of the younger people are socially conscious, and they want to work for companies that are willing to invest in accessibility and inclusion. He said also, some of these young people, they feel like accessibility will be a future skill that is valued by employers. So they want to come to work for us so they can learn accessibility, so they can then go somewhere else for more money. He said, he said, we can hire people we normally wouldn't be able to, because we can't compete on pay. We can't compete on on time off or dental or medical. He said, but we can compete on dedication to our customers, on accessibility, on inclusion of people of minorities, race, ethnic, gender, all those things. So there are more and more things I find out every day about the direct benefits and unintended benefits of accessibility. And I'm looking forward to helping even more people in 2026. And I look forward to hearing from some of your audience. I'd love to hear what they think when we say that people are afraid of accessibility, or they think it's going to be too expensive, or about the arguments that I've made about the how it's in people's best interest. I'd love to hear and get some actual conversations going, maybe get some ratings and some reviews on your podcast platforms or your YouTube channel,
Absolutely. I am always down for getting some reviews and comments. But I too agree. I'd like for people to put some comments out there and hear their thoughts. Like we talked earlier, this isn't necessarily about a disability. This is about everyday people that use these tools as well. My wife who watches TV with the closed captions on. It doesn't work for me because I can't read as fast as it's going across the screen. But
you can turn the audio description and the closed captions on at the same time, and it'll read it to you.
Really?
Yeah, that gets a little that can get a little clunky. We didn't talk about it, but dark mode, the ability to swap the black on white or white on black is something most everybody uses nowadays. And that was originally goes back to the 70s for people with vision loss who had enough vision they could still see, but they had to blow the text up very large, like 8, 10, 12, 14 times. And being able to invert the colors really helped. So it's kind of cool seeing something designed for people with vision loss that's pretty much everywhere now. It's getting to the point where dark mode is on so many websites. I think there'll come a time soon when they'll stop announcing that it's there.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
It'll be one of those things it'll be so expected that nobody will have to announce they have it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like automatic transmissions in cars now. Now if you see a car that's a stick, it just like everybody just freezes like, what is this thing?
Yeah, but I'm old enough to still have the belief that a Mustang and or a Corvette should both still be available with a standard transmission. That's just me.
Yep. My Corvette is an automatic, but to be honest, I had to search for an automatic because the majority of them are the 6-speed. But I just wanted something to cruise around with and show that I am at my midlife crisis and I'm embracing it.
Yeah. And the truth is it costs a lot more money to get a standard transmission nowadays.
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
They say they use a lot more fuel too. So
yeah, because you just can't keep your foot out of them. That's
well, I mean, you can't change gears with the speed and precision of a computer. That's just not possible.
No, absolutely. Well, Max, can you tell everybody where is it that they could find you, and if they wanted to hire you and have them help with their business?
Yeah, so they can go to theaccessibilityadvantage.com. They can send an email to maxwell@theaccessibilityadvantage.com. And I also love it for people to find me over on LinkedIn, where I'm Maxwell Ivey. Ivy is in Victor EY. I do hope that people will reach out and have conversations. There's a place on my website where they can book a chat with me to discuss further the possibility of working with me on improving accessibility, or also possibly coming on my podcast and talking about their business. And I'm actually looking for some companies willing to do some before and after type episodes. So I feel like it'd be some really cool content if we could do some future clients before, during, and after, and really do the content creation alongside improving accessibility over time. So theaccessibilityadvantage.com.
All right. Yeah. I think anybody out there, if you were a young person that's wanting to start their own company and they're in that process of going through it, this is the time right now to be thinking about accessibility and how can you incorporate that into not just your website, but your business in general.
Products,
all of that,
services.
Yep, absolutely. So all of that type of stuff is only going to give you a more relatable relationship with your clients and your customers. And at the end of the day, if you do it at the beginning, it won't cost you near as much when you go back later and you regret not doing it. So,
amen, brother.
Hey, it's easier to do it right the first time. And I think what you're hearing here is the best way. So reach out to Mr. Ivey, and if you got questions or you got any kind of comments, again, we'd both like to hear a little bit about what your thoughts are on why it is that businesses don't use those as promotional opportunities when they make these changes. But I'd love to hear about it. Y'all take care, be safe, and we will catch y'all next time.
You've been listening to Creators at Work, a podcast from the Barracks Media Network. Thanks to our guest for sharing their experience, and thank you for listening. Discover more creative conversations across the Barracks Media Network. We'll see you next time.